Okay, for number 25, again, you could try guess and check, which means just you keep trying different things to get the numbers to work out right, okay? But what I am going to teach, for those of you who are struggling with that, because a lot of times people just have a hard time with that, is we're going to split the middle term here, okay? So here's what we do. We say, all right, we're going to treat this, we're going to do factoring by grouping here. We're going to split that middle term up so we can factor by group. And if you remember, we're thinking, okay, I'm going to multiply the number out front, the a, if this were ax squared plus bx plus c, okay, if I'm thinking of it that way. I know it's got p's and not x's, but it doesn't really matter, does it? So we say a times c, since there's a number in front of our square term, 3 times negative 6 is negative 18, okay? Trying to multiply, find two numbers that multiply to give me negative 18, and at the same time they need to add up to that b, that middle term coefficient, negative 7. Okay, so let's see if we can figure this out. Let's see, 1 times 18 is 18, 9 times 2 is 18, and it has a difference of 7, so I bet it's going to be something with a 9 and a 2. All right, if I want them to add up to be a negative 7, it needs to be negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7. And then we check that negative 9 times 2 is negative 18. So we can factor, we can take that middle term and we can split it apart this way. So I'm leaving the 3p squared alone, and instead of writing minus 7p, I'm going to take and replace minus 7p right here with minus 9p plus 2p, because negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7. So I'm going to put negative 9p plus 2p. I'm just rewriting the middle term so I can get 4 terms, and I can do factoring by grouping. Okay, so now I'm going to do is group these two terms together and these two terms together. And if you remember how to do this, we're looking for the GCF of each set of those terms. So in the first term here, I'll do it in blue, I can take a 3 out of both of the terms, and then I can take a p out also. So if you have 3p squared and you divide out 3p, you would have p left, and then there's a subtraction sign. If I had 9 and divided out 3, I would have 3 left. I had a p, but I divided it out, so there's no p's left. Now let's come over to the second set. There's a plus here, so I'm going to write it down. If there had been a negative there, I don't know if you remember, but if there had been a subtraction sign there, we would have factored a negative number out. But we've got a plus sign here, so it's a little easier. Okay. So I have 2p minus 6. I can take a 2. Let me do a different color here just so we can keep our sets straight. I can take a 2 out of 2p minus 6. And what I've got left over, if I take the 2 out of 2p, is a p. And if I have a minus, 6 divided by 2 is 3. And look, I've got a p minus 3. That's a new GCF because now I have 2 terms instead of 4 terms. And each of those 2 terms has p minus 3 in it. So I can say, hey, they have p minus 3 in common. That's their GCF, their greatest common factor. And what are the leftovers? 3p is left over in the first set and plus 2 in the second set. So this factors into p minus 3, 3p plus 2. Do number 27 next. I'm just going to pick some of the harder ones to look at in 4.6. 6x squared minus 7xy minus 3y squared. Okay, I look at this, I know it's not going to be an easier one to factor because of this 6 in front of this x squared. And again, I could try guess and check where I go, okay, I know I'm going to have an x here and an x here and a y here and a y here, and I can see about what would I put in front of the x's to multiply to get 6, what would I put in front of the y's to multiply to get negative 3, but have all that add up to negative 7. That seems a little overwhelming to a lot of people, so we're going to do what we did on number 25. We're going to do factoring by grouping. So I'm going to mark this out just because we're going to do factoring by grouping. All right, when I factor by group, I'm going to take these 3 terms and split them up into 4 terms. And how I split them up is I take that middle term and I split it up so that I can get this to factor using factoring by grouping. So I'm saying, okay, I need to multiply this coefficient of the front term times this minus 3, the last term coefficient. 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. And then I have a negative 7 as my coefficient of my middle term. So I'm trying to multiply to get negative 18 and still add to get the number in the middle, the coefficient of the middle term, negative 7. All right, we kind of had the same thing on 25, I believe, or on something we did here just a second ago. We know 9 and 2 would work. Negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7, and negative 9 times 2 is negative 18. So I can take that middle coefficient, and I'll write it in red just so you can see that that's where the middle coefficient is going. This negative 7xy up here becomes a negative 9, and we put the letters with it, the variables with it that it had, xy, plus 2, and an xy with it. And then I'm just going to write the minus 3 squared. So if you notice, the first and the last term just get copied down, and the middle term just gets rewritten using these numbers that we found over here that would work. All right, now what we do is we group this into two sets of terms. I've got one term there, one set of terms there, and another pair of terms here. For the first pair of terms, we're looking for its GCF. Well, I can see that a 3 would divide into 6 and 9, and both of the terms have an x in them. So that would be my GCF of the first two terms. And I'm looking for my leftovers to put in here, right? 6 divided by 3 is 2. X squared take out of x leaves an x left over. I'm going to copy down that subtraction sign. 9 divided by 3 is 3. I had an x, but I took it out, but I still have a y. So that's how my first little set of terms factored. Now I'm going to my second pair. There are no numbers that divide out of 2 and 3, but do you notice that both of the terms have a y? So we could divide a y out of both terms. That's those two terms GCF. Now what's left? What are the leftovers? If I had 2xy and I took the y out, I'd have a 2x left. And then there's the subtraction sign. I had a 3. I did not divide it out, so I'll write it down. I had a y squared. I took the y out, one y out, so I'll have a y left. Now do you notice what we wanted to have happen happened? Both of these terms have this 2x minus 3y in it. That's a new GCF of the new two terms we wrote, right? So that new GCF comes out front. And then I write the leftovers. In the first term, what was left over was that 3x that I circled. In the second term, I'll circle the leftovers. It's plus y. And we just factored it. You're done once you do that. One of the reasons I know I'm done, I don't see any squares left inside of there. 29. 29 says 2h squared plus 7hk minus 15k squared. I'm going to do factoring by grouping again just because it gives you a way to get there without just having to keep guessing, okay? So what I do is I'm saying I'm going to multiply if I think of this as ax squared plus bx plus c, just that general equation of a quadratic, I multiply a times c. 2 times negative 15 is negative 30. Just ignore that line. I'm sorry about it, but if I mess with it, sometimes it messes the video up. So we're trying to multiply to get negative 30, and the same two numbers need to add up to the b in the middle, the 7. Okay, well, I know that 10 and 3 make 30, and they have a difference of 7. So if I want a negative 30, but I want a positive 7, let's see, 10 minus 3 would be a positive 7, and 10 times negative 3 would be negative 30. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite my equation. I'm going to leave my first term, 2h squared, the same. But I'm going to take that 7hk, I'm going to underline it in red, I'm going to replace it with red. I'm going to put the h and the k, I'm going to put the variables with this 10 that I found over here and with this minus 3 that I found. So it's 10hk minus 3hk because 10hk minus 3hk is 7hk, right? All right, and then I copy down my last term, minus 15k squared. Remember what we do now when we've got 4 terms and we do factoring by grouping is we look at these 2 terms together and then we look at the last 2 terms together and we're looking for a GCF out of each one. Okay? Out of the first set of terms that I underlined in blue, you could divide a 2 out of both of those and you could divide a h out of both of those. So what you'd have left over out of 2h squared would be h. And then 10 divided by 2 is 5, and I had a hk, but I took the h out, so there's a k left. Now let's go to the second set of terms. Anytime we see a subtraction sign there, we know we're going to factor out a minus, okay? And then I look at the numbers. 3 and 15, both are divisible by 3. I have hk with this 3, and I have a k squared over there, so I can see that both terms have a k in them. So let's see what my leftovers would be, because my GCF is minus 3k. What's left? Okay, out of 3hk, if you took the 3 and the k out, you'd have a h left. And then I factored that minus out, right? So a negative 15 divided by a negative 3 out front is a positive 5, right? If you want to make sure you got it right, redistribute. Negative 3h times k is a negative 3hk. Negative 3 times 5 would be a negative 15. I got to mess with my k's though, don't I? I had a k squared up here, but we took one k out, so there'd be a k left. Now, do we have a new GCF in both of these terms? Yes, we do. It's h plus 5k. So let's take it out front. H plus 5k comes out front. It's the new GCF of those two new terms I created. And then my leftovers would be 2h here, and then minus 3k here, and we would have factored 29 at that point. So we're done with that.